Hey, NADA 20 Group GG08. I'm Bill Thornton. I want to introduce my good friend and business partner, Wayne Hawksworth from Brookside Motors.
Hi, everybody.
Flattered and very appreciative that you took the time and offered to have Wayne come out as a guest speaker and talk to us about used car acquisition and how he stocks a large inventory and in getting those cars. And as flattered as we are by the offer, we thought that this was a more efficient way. Obviously, he's very busy, has a lot to do, and with the travel and expense and everything, we've decided to do this video for you versus having him come out to the meeting. Wayne and I have been good friends since 1985. We've been business partners since 1993, and together we have bought thousands and thousands of used cars. So we've kind of seen it all. We've gone full circle from the easy days to the tough days, and through all that, Wayne's really stayed up on the market, and he's probably the best in the area as far as used car acquisition. I have rendered myself the worst in the area because I don't do it anymore. But
Because he can.
Right, true. So anyway, we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to talk about how Wayne and Brookside and his team acquires inventory, some of the different processes that they use, some of the tricks of the trade, because it is a lot tougher world out there with Carfax and all the other challenges, the auction challenges. Auctions their revenues have been way down, so fees have gone way up, and they're looking for any way they can to keep your dollar. Right. And Wayne's really struggled with that, and but again, it's like anything, you just got to work at it and figure out how to work the process. So I think what we're going to do is brief overview. Wayne's my partner, managing partner, and the vice president of Brookside Motors, and he's the driving force behind all the inventory. He doesn't do it alone. He's got a couple guys that help him. So with that, we're going to start by talking about the physical auctions, and the format for this video is I'm just going to kind of ask him some questions, and he's going to talk to us. So with that said, Wayne, let's talk about physical auctions and how you prepare for the auctions and so forth.
Well, the first thing that we do with regard to the auctions is kind of get an idea first of what we need in inventory. From there, it's me, gentleman Kevin Schiffer, and John Spangler that helps me at the sales. Manheim's got 38 lanes or whatever it is now here in Manheim, Pennsylvania. Very, very difficult for one person to work the sale, so we have 3 people doing it. But I basically go online during the week, usually 2 days before the sale, and look at pre-sale inventory on Manheim.com. Through pre-sale inventory, you can dial into the actual vehicle, look at condition reports, look at Carfax, auto checks, get kind of an idea of what that vehicle represents. Some have pictures, most don't. The condition reports are there. Got to be a little careful of condition reports because there's no uniformity whatsoever from report writer to report writer or auction to auction. I bought 2 9s that in my opinion were probably 4 9s, and I bought 3 7s that I would never have bought if I would have been at the sale. So
when you talk about that, just really quickly, the condition report is a rating system, correct?
Right. It's a rating system that the auctions use that's supposed to give the buyer or the potential buyer the ability to kind of gauge what that car is without actually seeing that car.
What are you looking for in that rating report? Like, what are you focusing in on first?
The first thing that I look at, it rates it at a number, and it's from 0 to 5. 5 obviously the best, 0 the worst. So I look for anything, and you can dial into those the pre-sale listings and actually look at only 4s or better or 3.5s or better. You can kind of do it so you don't have to look at 7,000 cars. You can look at 200 cars. The report will tell you if there's issues. It'll show pictures, sometimes not the best pictures, which again, being at the physical inventory is the best way to do it, but you get at least an idea of what that car is, and then depending on the sale that you're at, some of them are very good. You know, I bought a lot of cars in Nashville over last winter when prices were down, and those report writers were very, very thorough, very, very good. The cars came in as advertised. Other sales that I've purchased vehicles at, not so much. New England was one.
What's driving that number on the report? What's driving it from a 5 down to a 3? I mean, when they rate it, is it paint work? Is it damage? Is it the amount of work that needs to be done?
It's not mechanical. It's all based on physical and the visual. It's interior, exterior. It's paint work, dents, dings, scratches, curbed wheels. None of it is mechanical in nature.
Okay, we were talking about going to the physical auction. You talked about taking the guys along. Something else he didn't mention that we've done for years is we have a method of communication. We use two-way radios. When we were running 6 or 8 of us at a time, we were on 2 ways. I think these guys communicate iPhones now.
Yeah, iPhones.
But nevertheless, you have to be able to communicate if you take multiple people out. Because a lot of times we'd be in one lane and we'd see a car. It wouldn't be my car, it'd be Wayne's car. So I'd call him, he'd come up and get it. But it allows us to get much greater coverage. So when you're at the auction, you're doing your pre-sale inventory like you just spoke of, getting the rating reports ahead of time. When you go to the sale, what's the next thing that happens, and how do you get your day on track to be successful?
Well, from the pre-sale list, you put everything in your workbook, and from there, I print the lists up, give them to the guys. We meet there in the morning, go over the list. Hey, here's kind of what we're looking for. Again, the communication's the key. What I think something's worth, and one of the things that have made us successful over the years in used cars, is always putting two heads together. Okay. Even if I thought I had a good idea what this car is worth, I always like getting a second opinion. Make sure that I'm on track. I always look at my books. Always look at the black book just to make sure that I'm thinking properly.
What are the guides you're using today for valuation? That's a good point.
Yeah, we use MMR Black Book, and we just. And I might use this Vin Viper that gives you Kelley Blue Book and NED also. But in the past, it's been Black Book, MMR, and our own idea of what something's worth. Because just because something does it at sale doesn't mean that there's profit in it back at the store. And we've learned that, over the years the hard way.
So your sources, are they all digital, or are you using physical black books?
We still use physical black books in addition to the black book on the smartphone. I want to get away from the black books and do a single, with AutoCheck or Carfax and MMR. It's just so time consuming now to sit there and try to scan this and give yourself enough time to look at it as a car's running through the sale. So this Vin Viper application, and there's a lot of them out there, AutoNeek, and but that's probably a viable alternative to doing it by hand because it is so time consuming.
Okay. So you're going to the auction. You got your plan together. You get there. And then what do when you're going and looking at these vehicles, obviously a lot of these cars are at the sale that are problematic.
Right.
So are there any kind of tricks that you can share with us to help limit purchasing bad cars or something like that?
Yeah. We have always had, it used to be a 3 strikes rule, where if the car had higher mileage, had a
wrong
fender damage, right, didn't have the right equipment, didn't have a sunroof and leather, one of the things that we look for now with kid movers is making sure they have DVDs. DVD vehicles, in Suburbans and vans fly off the lot. Ones that don't, for our lot, don't seem to. They age. So we take a look at those vehicles, and if there's 2 strikes, if you got something that's got higher mileage for the year, and it's got 2 panels that need to be painted, pass on it. If the interior, again, if it's got high mileage and the interior is not well taken care of, pass on it. I mean, it's too hard to sell the right ones right now. If you buy the wrong ones, you're just going to kill yourself. So it makes no sense to do it, so pass on it.
And typically we really started that program because of equipment. I mean, it was so easy to talk yourself into buying that particular car with either the wrong color or, geez, it doesn't have a 3rd seat or something like that, but it's cheap, but it can never be cheap enough.
Right.
So that's kind of why we developed that, and we've kind of now come to the idea that you pay more for the right car because you can't be cheap enough on the wrong one. So that's been a kind of a philosophy and a kind of a policy that we've stuck to.
Right.
All right. So what else about the physical auctions? You talked about looking at the vehicle. You want to smell it. You want to take a good look at it. You got to look underneath these vehicles because a lot of states around this area use a lot of salt. Some of these cars can be heavily corroded. So it's a matter of being able to thoroughly look at this car before it hits the auction lane.
Right.
If it's going through the lane and you haven't done your homework, that's not the time to start. It's not the time to make a bid on that car because you're probably going to make a mistake.
Right. Which
so it's about tends to happen. So it's about being organized and so forth. But it's also about taking the time and making sure you do a 360 on the car.
Right. Making
sure that you have enough time to make sure it has a 4-wheel drive button in it and things like that.
Right.
What else at the auction wing can you?
Well, and again, the general condition of the car, you want so many people just either they'll stand in a lane, they'll look at a car just as just sitting there. Put your head in the car. Take a good sniff, because as nice as a car can be, if there's a problem with a smell, with especially now with all the allergies and situations that kids have, if it's got mold and mildew, you're probably not getting it out. You can't clean it well enough. Don't carry that car. It's just going to age. You're going to take it back to the sale. You're going to lose your $2,500 and be like, oh man, I knew I shouldn't have bought that. But we all get, hey, we all need stuff, so we all try to justify why that we need this car. If it's the right car, buy it. If it's that's a one strike. If it's heavy cigar smoke, if it's heavily smoked in, that car you can't own cheap enough because there's no buyers out there for that car.
The other thing that we've been huge believers in, and that is what you learn about the market when you're at the sale. You tend to see what's popular, what's not, what the overall attitude of the business is.
Right.
Tend to learn about what cars are hot and what aren't. And then you can compare that when you go make an appraisal. And that's the problem with some of these sites like vAuto. On a GM car specifically, you can't dial down the equipment. So just because one did X number of dollars, you don't really know if it was all jammed up or a plain Jane. But when you see that car at the auction, then you can kind of relate it to your appraisal.
Right. There's no shortcut to go into the sale. I mean, if you have the availability to get to one, within reason, you need to get to one, because if you look at MMR, the price differential between a car with comparable miles could be $3,500 or $4,000. There might be a good reason for it. There might not. Maybe there was a guy that was in there that just paid too much money, which happens a lot. But without actually seeing those cars go through the sale to get a good idea, because on MMR, all it tells you is engine and transmission and air conditioning. It doesn't tell you whether it's got a sunroof, leather, DVD. And those price differentials, in a Tahoe or in a minivan, a town and country, there are huge price differences. So, and we as dealers, you tend to look at that most expensive one when you're appraising something, and you say, well, it did it at Manheim, but you don't know what it was, because if you don't visit to see what they're doing, very tough to ascertain what that value is.
Right. Plus, it gives you real good pulse on where the strength of the market is, just based on how hard guys are bidding and what prices are bringing. So, it's one of those things where we believe that if you have a guy in the organization that has access to go to a physical auction, they should go, just because they'll learn more at that physical auction one day a week than they will anywhere else.
Right.
After the vehicles are bought at the sale, we utilize post-sale inspection.
Yes.
And we use our own transporters to have them hauled back. So if you're not sending guys because of transport issues, I guarantee there's a transporter in your area, or you can find one that'll drop these things off at your doorstep. If you're worried about your guys not being able to look these cars over, you can pay for post-sale inspections, and that also gives you peace of mind, because you get a little insurance policy with it too, right?
Right. When years back, before we were buying the volume of cars that we're buying now, we used to drive our own cars, check them out, and everything worked fine. As time progressed and as inventory got more difficult to purchase, the quality of the cars at the sales today versus what they were 5, 6, 7 years ago aren't anywhere close to the same. The auction policies aren't the same. It's there to make the auctions money. They're not so concerned about us as sellers or us as buyers or even the sellers. The policies they put in place are really there just to keep the deal together so that they can make their $600-700 a car, which is a problem for us, because we need quality cars. Just to have the car doesn't do us any good, and we were running into situations where we're buying 15, 20 cars at a sale and not being able to drive them properly and bringing them home and having 2 transmissions that are bad to the tune of $5,000 or $6,000. You're done. You can't make any money on that vehicle, so take your loss and go on to the next one. So we started doing the post-sale inspections. Our post-sale inspection, you have a week or 2 weeks. Full inspection. They do the frame check and everything. We still frame check it when it comes back to the store because they miss things. We've given cars back with frame damage that they checked and said there was no frame damage until we said there was frame damage. So do your due diligence. Just because they say there's nothing wrong doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. And you have a little bit of an insurance policy, that 2-week policy to drive the car. Hey, if the tranny now slips and it didn't slip, if the motor now makes noise, anything under $500 is not arbitratable. Anything over $500, it doesn't matter what it is. It can be a sunroof motor, it could be a DVD. It doesn't have to be mechanical. It just has to be over $500. So it's a good insurance policy. Costs money. Our fees through the auction, again, over the past 5 years, have more than doubled. You used to be able to buy a car that was $8,000 or $9,000 and it would cost you, $180. That fee's now $310 plus $140 for post sale, plus increase to get the car back, from transportation. So, from the purchase price to what we own it for when it gets to the lot is about $700-800 per unit. That we did not have those expenses.
So it's that much more important to make sure you're minimizing your errors.
Right, and you're buying the right vehicles, and that's the only way that you can ensure that on the other side of it, that your PVR is going to be what it should be.
The other thing about the auctions is networking with other wholesalers, other dealers. You end up making a lot of friends, and you end up picking a lot of people's heads on where the market is. So there's a lot of advantages to going to the auto auction. If you're concerned your guy is not trustworthy at the auto auction, then you probably got the wrong guy.
Right.
So.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's kind of enough. Do you have anything else on auctions? I mean.
No, I think it's pretty much everything.
Yeah. It's very expensive to buy a car at the auction, find out it's a bad car, and turn it around and send it back. Because even hammer to hammer, even if you get the exact same amount of money paid for it,
right,
you're going to be out what?
Almost, $1,200, depending on the price of the car. Yep.
Okay. So the other thing that Wayne's been utilizing over the last year has been simulcast, and we all know that because when we call him, he's got his computer and about 5 different auctions going, and you can hear it in the background.
18.
Right. So anyway, Wayne, talk to the group a little bit about simulcast and how it works and what it's done for you.
Well, I started doing simulcast because I was having difficulty going to the physical auctions and coming home with enough inventory. So where typically I'd go to an auction, 3 days a week, and come home with 6 or 7 cars, and I needed to come home with 15 or 20 cars. I started the simulcast with the idea that with the condition report, if it was legitimate and I could actually utilize somebody else's eyes as I would use my own, that I could, leverage my time. I wouldn't have to travel, and I can hit different auctions. So on any given day, there was 3 or 4 auctions that I would hit, and I bought a big monitor for my office, and I would have 25 lanes open at one time. I would do the process is exactly the same. You still do your pre-sale inventory. You go through and make your workbook, make your lists, organize everything, and then the next morning you come in early enough and get them all set up. The nice thing about simulcast is you don't have that travel time, so that saves, for me, that's 4 hours, 5 hours a day in travel, and if you have two people with you, that double that, and it's totally unproductive time. The hard thing with simulcast is that just like any other sale, you spend a lot of time to not get any vehicles. It's a difficult process, and when you have a bunch of lanes open, it's far more hectic trying to buy on simulcast at multiple sales than it is at the physical auction, because you can only be in one lane at one time versus looking at 21 lanes doing, running at 4 different auctions. So, but one of the best things about it is, depending on the time of year, I mentioned earlier about Nashville. I was buying cars down in Nashville over the winter, and we did extremely well with them, even though we had to spend $500 a car to get them north, in addition to the normal expenses. But the arbitrage that you can take advantage of from pricing, for whatever reason, I was able to buy cars down in Nashville cheaper than here in Manheim, or Hatfield or New Jersey. And they were really nice cars compared to up here, because of the conditions. Nashville obviously is, south central part of the country versus the northeast. And we were able to make money on cars that otherwise we would not be able to buy. So in those circumstances, I went even further than that. We used to buy cars in Florida. I looked at sales down at Tampa and at Coe, and I looked in Dallas, and I never bought anything from that far away lately, but it gives you the availability to kind of test these markets to see what might be available to your inventory. So it's a very good way to do it. It doesn't work 100% of the time, like all these things don't work 100% of the time, but you can get a lot of inventory and good inventory at the right prices, even though you have a little more expense, if you do your due diligence.
Any other challenges about simulcast that you can think of that are cons to doing simulcast versus?
The hardest thing that I found was that going to the physical sales, you develop relationships with arbitrators, with people at the sale, and they get to know you. Yeah, auctioneers. You really get to know these people, and they get to know you. So that relationship means something when there's an issue with arbitration. And the biggest problem that we've had over time with any of the sales, even physical and otherwise, but especially with the simulcast, is because they don't know really who you are. You're a number, you're a voice on the phone. If you have an issue in arbitration that normally, if it was a sale that I went to physically and I could talk to the arbitrator, I have better luck with that coming out in favor of me at the physical auction, because I know the people and they know me and they know I'm not trying to beat them out of anything, versus I'm just another guy on the phone who's trying to get out from under a purchase because I paid too much money for it or for whatever reason. And there are a lot of those people out there. That's not me.
So there's still a lot of value to the relationship side of what you're saying.
Big time.
And that would be one of the cons for simulcast.
Right.
I think we know several dealers. Some of the bigger dealers, used car dealers, those guys all use simulcast. They have to, because it's physically impossible to physically be at all those auctions. So simulcast is an important feature, especially if you're trying to maintain a large inventory.
Right. Just
because you just absolutely have to do it. Let's talk a little bit. You spoke about the price advantages throughout the different regions of the country. Let's talk a little bit about OVE and Smart Auction. Now, a lot of our dealers utilize Smart Auction. I think I told you that.
Right.
And a lot of these guys buy a lot of cars on Smart Auction. And some of those guys that buy a lot of cars on Smart Auctions have physical auctions close to them, but they don't go.
Right.
So, once again, we've talked for years about the value of going to the auction if you have the availability to physically go to the auction. But OVE, let's talk about OVE instead of Smart Auction, because I think everybody's got a pretty good handle on Smart Auction. How do you utilize OVE?
Yeah, OVE is something that I'll utilize if we have a customer that comes in that looks for a specific vehicle that we don't have. We look at each other's inventories, through the 3 rooftops that the organization is under. If there's nothing that we have in stock. We go on OVE and just to see if there's anything out there at the right price. The biggest problem, the biggest pro with OVE, obviously there's a lot of cars on OVE. The negative in terms of OVE, and I've not purchased any cars on OVE, is dealers are trying to retail their vehicles.
It's a price thing.
I mean, that's extremely difficult. The other side of it is, again, from a condition standpoint, if there's not a condition report written on it from Manheim and you have a seller disclosure, there's a lot of variation.
So you're not even buying cars on OVE?
I have not. I've tried to buy cars on OVE. I've never purchased a vehicle on OVE. Have done some smart auction purchases, but very few, and nothing on OVE.
So it doesn't sound like OVE is going to be the place to stock your
Very
inventory.
tough. Very tough.
Okay. Next on your list is rental car companies. We at the Chevy store utilize Enterprise a lot to buy cars. Talk about that.
Right. We have just started that relationship because Bill was using it. Chip was doing a good job with buying vehicles from Enterprise directly. We have in the past 3 or 4 years have utilized Dollar and Hertz and Enterprise because that late model vehicle is, again, there's times when there's a price break and you can get a good value, and especially with the cost of that 4 or 5 year old 50 or 60,000 mile vehicle, it approaches that 2010 2011. So from a price standpoint, you can get a lot of bang for your buck at points in time. So we started doing that. The other nice thing with that is you can pretty much get that car every single week, so you don't need 3 or 4 of them.
Right.
If you have 1 or 2 of those, that's all you need. If you can turn those 1 or 2 every week, that's 8 a month. It keeps the dollars moving, which is what we all want to do. So that's a very good avenue for that late model car. It's going to be taken care of in general. It's going to be relatively clean versus the other vehicles that you buy. And again, dealing with a specific person at an Enterprise or a Hertz or a Dollar, you can again develop the relationship, which is big time important, and you can save money buying directly. You're going to save $500-$700 per unit buying from Enterprise versus dealing with the auction, paying the fees, and then getting it back to your store.
And one of the main things buying from these car companies, these rental car companies, is maintaining a discipline. I mean, I think we several times throughout the years, we find that Cobalts are a great deal or Impalas are a great deal, and we buy too many of them. And then next thing you know, they sit around, then the market changes, then you own them all a grand too high. So you got to make sure that you exhibit some discipline in how much you stock of that stuff, because replacing it, like Wayne said, is just a phone call away. You don't need 3 of them on the lot. You can have 1,
right,
typically.
Right.
So take some discipline there. Okay, well, we're approaching a half an hour on this video, so talk about a few other things. Other things we've done over the years is we've had a lot of success buying cars off the curb by having a nice sign out in front of your dealership. We buy cars, we pay top dollar.
Right.
We've tried some billboards over the years, probably less efficient than having the sign at the building.
Right.
But do you kind of try to keep one up all the time, or?
Yeah, and it varies. We have a new reader board that we have it up all the time now, and it rotates. But that obviously, if we could buy all of our cars that way, that's the way to go, because you're getting your cleanest, best taken care of, takes the least through the shop, least expenses. I mean, that's what you want, other than trade-ins. I mean, that's the best way to go. So,
and what's the best message? We pay top dollar for clean cars.
Yeah, top dollar for
top
your
dollar
car.
Paid
Yep.
for your vehicle.
Yep.
Okay. Let me see. What else did we talk about here? Oh, we also talked about utilizing wholesalers.
Right.
So that, again, it's developing relationship with local wholesalers. You got to trust your used car manager. Once again, if you're not letting them have a relationship with a wholesaler because you don't trust them, you got to get a new guy.
Right.
Because wholesalers, if you're willing to pay up and they know you're willing to pay up, they're going to call you on a lot of cars.
Right.
I mean, we have a Honda dealer north of us that between Wayne and Chip calls us on an amazing amount of
Right.
quality cars that we buy. Also having relationships with your other new car dealers, used car managers. So the Volvo store needs to know that when they see a GM product or they see something you'd buy, that you want to be on their list. So we need to stay in touch with these guys to let them know that that's an avenue as well. And the other thing we talked about is being known as a buyer. You know, so when wholesalers and dealers and used car managers know that you're the guy, you're the buyer, and you are an aggressive buyer, you get those phone calls. So there's another way to pick up a couple cars a week, is to be that guy.
Right.
Do you have anything to add on that?
No, I mean that's one of the areas that I think we can do a better job personally, you know, at our dealership is that we know a lot of dealers, we talk to a lot of dealers, we probably don't do as good a job as making sure that they know the kind of cars that we will buy, because, you know, speaking of the one Honda dealer that we deal with a lot, we get very good buys from him. It's something that they don't carry. They don't have any interest in that inventory, and the purchases. If we were to go at Manheim to buy the cars that we're buying from them, we would spend probably, you know, $7,000-$8,000 more for the same car plus fees. So it's a really good. Just because you're buying it from the dealer doesn't mean that you're going to have to pay top dollar. If it's something that they don't have a good idea what it's worth, and they view you as the expert, you know what it's worth because you sell them. And they're calling you to get you to put the number on it. So that's been a really good relationship that we had. And again, the bottom line to a lot of this stuff is relationship, you know, building and at the auctions, with specific wholesalers, with specific dealers. And if you're straight up and you're giving people good information and developing that relationship, there's a lot of money to be made, and it's good for everybody. You're not taking advantage of anybody. It's just good, really good business.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good overview of how Wayne and Brookside Motors acquires inventory and some of the tricks of the trade that those guys have. It's a lot more challenging for them than it is for us. We have a new car department to feed us some really high-end trades. We try to hide most of them from Wayne so he doesn't see them. But his job's tough. He's got to put 100 plus cars on the ground, and he's got to do it without the benefit of a new car franchise. So he is a great, he's a very great resource for used car information. He's a great buyer and runs a good operation. So I guess that's it. Do you have anything else?
No, that's good.
Okay, well, hope you guys enjoyed this video.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your meeting.